Nail guns can be great time savers for DIY projects and are vital for efficient work in the building trades. But when they inevitably malfunction or completely break down, how do you go about troubleshooting and making repairs? We'll try to answer those questions and more right now here on Shop Tales and Lore. If you're a serious do-it-yourselfer or home workshop enthusiast looking for a variety of helpful content in one place, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to be notified whenever we release a new video. And if we've helped you today, please take a moment to like, share, and comment below. It helps these videos reach more folks, and your comments help others as well. Thanks again. Pneumatic nailers are affordable, have few moving parts, and are arguably among the most reliable designs. But since we're focused here on the more complex airless systems, let's save compressors and hoses for another time. The most basic guns, designed for small fasteners like upholstery staples and headless pins, rely on springs to supply the striking force and cycle the tool's action. Other similar light-duty tools use an electromagnetic solenoid to drive the fastener. The biggest drawback with both of these systems is that springs and solenoids alone lack the power needed to drive larger fasteners, especially in dense materials like hardwoods. In terms of their basic operation, combustion nailers are similar to pneumatic guns, but instead of compressed air, they use a flammable gas and an ignition source to drive the piston and firing pin with a small controlled explosion, much like an internal combustion engine. The fuel, typically butane or propane, is stored either in a replaceable cartridge or an onboard refillable reservoir. These tools supply maximum striking force without the bulk and weight of a compressor and hose, and have very long lives, but most are quite expensive and aren't really practical for most DIY budgets. Flywheel nailers use an electric motor to spin a relatively heavy flywheel, storing up kinetic energy. The motor and flywheel are set in motion when the tool's nose is pressed against the work. When the trigger is pulled, the spinning flywheel engages with linkage that transfers the striking force to a firing pin to drive the fastener. Springs, elastomeric bands, and/or electromagnetic solenoids may also be used to actuate one or more stages of the firing cycle. Despite their relatively heavy weight, bulk, and complexity, there are a lot of moving parts. Flywheel systems have been adapted to everything from brad guns to framing nailers and are quite reliable most of the time. But they can also be a little intimidating to figure out when they break down. They are by far the most common and affordable airless cordless technology, so let's take a look at a common malfunction, just one of several ailments that can be easily repaired by the home craftsman. Oh yeah, a quick side note. If you're having trouble finding a compatible 20-volt adapter for these older 18-volt DeWalt tools, especially the nailers and other tools that use low-voltage detection circuitry from the NiCad era, be sure to check out our related video, New Life for Early DeWalt Cordless Nailers. We'll put a link on your screen and in the description below. This DeWalt Model DC608 brad nailer has given us good service for over 10 years, but recently it started hanging up after the first shot, failing to reset for the next one. It wasn't happening with every use, but often enough to become a nuisance. Here's what it looked like before the repair. In this case, there was no jam in the magazine or the nose, so the problem had to be in the firing mechanism itself. Let's pop the hood and get a closer look. Using a T25 Torx bit, I removed the 3 screws holding the front cover in place. Let's start by identifying the major components. The motor is mounted at the top rear of the housing and really isn't visible from this angle. This is the flywheel, and this solenoid, actuated by the trigger, starts the firing sequence. This stationary frame holds several sliding components that control the transfer and timing of the kinetic energy stored in the flywheel to the firing pin, and finally to the fastener itself. Now, I'm not really set up for true high-speed video, but let's see if we can slow this down enough that you can still see what's happening. Let's look at each stage of the firing sequence in stop action. Here, the nailer is ready to fire. The nose is pressed against the work and the motor is running. When the trigger is pressed, the solenoid is energized, allowing the linkage that brings the transfer bar in contact with the spinning flywheel to start its upward travel. At this point, the braid has just been driven. The solenoid is de-energized, which lets the sliding transfer bar linkage return to its home position. The transfer bar is still deployed and the firing pin is still in the nose of the nailer, as evidenced by the extended rubber bands that operate the transfer bar follower. Only the band on the left is clearly visible. Here, the transfer bar and its follower are retracted back into the top of the housing, and everything is back in its start position, ready for another firing sequence. Here's how we figured out our particular problem. In this close-up, you can see how the transfer bar linkage presses the transfer bar into the flywheel when the linkage travels upward. Due to age, friction, and maybe some hardened grease inside the housing, this linkage would sometimes stick in the down position so that the transfer bar was not making contact with the flywheel, which in turn caused the misfire. We cleaned everything up, which helped, but the main fix comes from a little-known feature of these nailers. Many DeWalt guns, including a number of the current models, have a tension adjustment for the transfer bar linkage. By backing off of this screw just a quarter turn, the friction was eliminated and everything was working again like new. Now, the same or similar symptoms can be caused by worn or broken rubber bands that operate the transfer bar and its follower, so those may be worth checking out as well. Some models, especially the larger finishing and framing nailers, use long coil springs in place of the bands. Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure to let us know in the comments about particular ailments and fixes that you may have run into with your cordless nailers.